Welcome to the Journey 2020, where we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. coming off the weekend. Hope you had a great weekend. As you know, we are now officially, and it's been a while, into the holiday season. And for a lot of us, it means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I know this time of the year is just a fun time for a lot of people, and for others, it's kind of not so. As a matter of fact, make sure that you tune in next week. And I'm not quite sure if my guest today will be available, but next week, we're actually going to be talking to the person who came up with the idea and the concept of the Journey 2020 back in 2013. By the way, did I say that I'm Charles Morris? Anyway, Dr. Robertson, who came to me, who we've been doing things in the community for many years, he said, Charles, I want to do this show, and blah, 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 blah. So the rest is history. And he stopped doing the show a few years ago. And so I've been going solo. But next week, make sure you tune in. We're going to talk about this time of the year when it comes to depression, what people are going through, the suicide rate, what to look for, and how you might be able to help others or maybe even help yourself. So we thought that would be a good topic to cover this time of the year. So with that, even we may be enlightened on some of, with my guest today, he might be able to chime in on that a little bit as well. So as my guest today, and I was talking, he don't know it, but I talk about him all the time. But it's been a while since he's been on the show, but he's been on the show many times. And we will briefly talk about the Pastors Roundtable as well. But here's my pastor from True Iron Baptist Church, Pastor Omega Jenkins. Pastor Jenkins, how you doing today?
I'm good, Brother Morris. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Well, welcome to the Journey 2020. I was just saying, it's been a while since you've been on the show.
It has. And I'm glad to be back.
All right, I was talking to you, and for people who have actually been on the show and have seen you in the past, one of the things that I I tell people, I said, my pastor, he actually works in the for the jail system in corrections, and I always tell them that you have some great stories over the years. And can I ask you how long you've been working in corrections?
30 years.
Wow. And you always have some great stories. And it's it's intriguing to me because to me it's kind of like a different world, but it's the real world. But it's a lot of things you see, good, bad, and indifferent. And so to me, like you have to have a certain type of temperament to be involved in that world, and that's just my own personal opinion. Like for an example, Pastor, I know that I have a difficult time working with people with handicaps, and
Mm-hmm.
I should say people of special needs. And I think it takes a
Mm-hmm.
certain type of temperament, certain type of spirit to be able to do that. Not everyone is
Mm-hmm.
is is wired for that because, man, my heart bleeds so much. I don't. I just trying to wrap myself around it because I come from a place of activities, running, jumping, doing all these things that is so vibrant in my life, and I try to picture myself not being able to do it, and I just go into this little funky place like, oh my God, how difficult is that? But I say that to say that where where you are and what you do. But can you give me a little bit of history real quick, because I want to tell people what we really want to talk about. But can you give me a little history on one? I want to ask, how did you become involved in the correction system and your calling to come preach? Because in a way, we're going to kind of tie that all in. Can you kind of tell us, like, how did you come in, decide, well, you know what, I'm going to go work in this system right here, and then your calling to be in the pulpit. Can you kind of give us a brief summary of that?
Well, I had always wanted to be a part of law enforcement from a child. And after getting out of the military and moving to Florida, I began seeking employment in law enforcement. And at the time, this was back in early 1990. That was like a hiring freeze at the law enforcement agencies, but corrections was hiring. So I said, well, I can get in here and start here and maybe work my way through. But getting into corrections, as my life evolved, personally and professionally, I kind of found myself, there, and found some things about the career itself that were rewarding, and it aided my growth as a young man and as a young husband and as a father. As I said, it helped me to grow and mature, seeing that side of society. So, and that also seeing that side of society, um, you meet people whom obviously this is a dark point in their lives. Many people feel disparaged, feel hopeless, and it causes you, to at least want to encourage. And with growing up in the church, it kind of took me back to the church because that would help me to, as you said, keep an even keel because you're dealing with so many different things and you're unsure of what you're going to see a lot of times when you go in there or what you're going to deal with. So it took me back to my spiritual roots and being reconnected to my spiritual roots. It just helped me to realize my calling. And as the Lord revealed to me my calling a few years into my career, everything just kind of went into sync.
Well, that is what I want to talk about because I had been knowing you for a while, and you had been sharing some things with me. There's times when you share things with the church, in lessons, and when you're trying to get some things across. But then you said that you wanted that you were in school and you were going into counseling. How did that come about?
Well, as a corrections officer, you find yourself counseling, whether you want to or not. You wear a lot of hats because many times you find out as an officer that you're the only link for many of the people incarcerated. You're the link to the outside to them, and so a lot of their questions, a lot of their emotions are geared to you. And so you have to kind of find a way to deal with it professionally and deal with it in a manner whereas you can you can help them and possibly give them some direction. And so I found that interesting. I've always been a talker, and so I always gave time to talk or listen, and which again is a part of my calling. I realized it, and so I sought to get some maybe some professional teaching regarding the human mind and human behavior. And so I looked to a degree in psychology, crisis counseling, and thank God I was able to do that at Liberty University, which was also a Christian school. So it gave me good Bible study as well as study in the field of my choice. And so I just feel like it really made me well rounded as an officer, not only to those who are incarcerated, but to my peers, because many people in that field dealing with stress issues, stress related issues, it's very stressful. To couple that with whatever else might be going on outside of work, so I found myself being pretty beneficial, in helping people to um, first recognize that hey, this is something of the psychological nature, or this is something of the spiritual nature, and you might want to deal with it in this way or whatever. So it's pretty rewarding to be able to be there for people on both sides of the aisle.
I was just trying to figure out how can I ask this question because I don't want it to come off the way some might take it. Because let me see if I can ask it. There are many people who go to the church for counseling,
Hmm.
and then rightfully so. But how do you think? Well, yeah, you know what? I can ask it like this: how do you think that for those who are there to counsel in the church from the spiritual ministry side, but don't necessarily have the degree in counseling, how you think that may help them better understand and better prepare themselves for, I guess, some of the encounters that they may have with people who come to them. Yeah, yeah. That was my way of asking that
Well,
question.
well, having a degree and some professional training and teaching, it only adds to your repertoire. It adds to the tools that you can use that become available to you, and to be more beneficial, to be more impactful. It can never hurt, learning more. There are some who are just gifted, with the common knowledge and the ability to articulate their thoughts and ability to to corral the commonality practices and then share them, and that's great. And then to add that with professional teaching and training, it only makes you that much more impactful. So I encourage it to anyone, and particularly those who have been called to preach the word of God and the gospel. You cannot go wrong with adding to your calling professional teaching and training.
Well, and the reason I wanted to ask you on the show today was because I wanted you to kind of give us an insight on what we're talking about when it comes to, well, if I come to you for some spiritual counseling, but
Hmm.
then I also want to come to you, I may want to come to you for some spiritual counseling, but then with you going to school, like you said, you probably can pick up and add and recognize some things that maybe you wouldn't have some years ago.
Hmm.
So from your own personal belief, because I've asked this question to Dr. Robinson, I've asked it to Moses Mailer, who also does counseling,
Hmm.
and it's curious to me because I watch a lot of the reality shows like TV. I watch the Forensic Files. I watch the ID channel. So they're always giving these stories, which is real, which are really crime stories, and I'm always intrigued by the spirit in our culture, in our society. And I don't want to get into that where we could go with that, but I'm always that they never really touch on the spiritual side of it, Pastor. And
Hmm.
right? So they never really touch on the spiritual side of all this chaos and this madness that that is going on, and what people killed and all this stuff.
Hmm.
Like for example, I was just told the other day, and maybe you can
Hmm.
understand what I'm about to say. It was brought to my attention that they had a picture on Facebook of this little kitten, right? So this man had rescued this little kitten from the middle of the street. So
Hmm.
somebody or someone had taken the little kitten, Pastor, and glued the the feet to the street. So cars was kind of like going over it, so the kitten couldn't go anywhere. So my immediate thought is that spirit right there. Now I don't know where you would put that. I don't know how you would respond to that.
Hmm.
But my immediate thought is that's a spirit that's kind of like, Then we could talk about the psychological. But my first thought of it is that's a spirit from somewhere that, then you want to talk about the psychological part of that. But that's my point of trying to ask the wisdom of understanding the difference between the two.
Hmm.
Do you think that people who are able, let me see, do you think there's a difference? Let me, when you're dealing with certain situations, are you able to, for yourself, even though you may not say it to the person, are you sitting there going, oh, I see what this is sitting in front of me as well? Have you
Hmm.
ever, is that part of it as well? And I'm and I'm
Well,
and I'm talking about that evil spirit that what they're serving, because there's people who will tell you I serve Satan, I worship
mhm.
Satan. I'm not getting into that specifically, but I'm saying with some of the stuff that I see sometimes, they're really talking about who they are psychologically, when it's to me obvious there's something else in addition to that as well, is what I'm trying to say. And I hope I'm making
Yeah.
sense.
I personally think that all behavior begins with the spiritual. I don't think you can necessarily separate the two, the psychological from the spiritual. I think the spiritual is the beginning point, and what drives that spirit, what motivates that spirit, then in turn affects the psychological. Like the Bible said that fear is a spirit. Second Timothy, um, Second Timothy 1. It says, for God did not give us a spirit of fear. Okay, so fear is a spirit. The Bible also says that fear torments. Okay, so there you have something of the spiritual realm, which is fear, has the ability to torment a person. Um, and then First John talks about the spirit of error. So these things, they all begin with the spirit. And then Jesus said, from the heart flows the issues of life. So someone to take a cat and glue it, is someone who enjoys destruction, they enjoys torture, they enjoy things like that. Then yeah, definitely that's not of God, and it's a type of spirit that you have to, as counsel, you have to identify first through conversation and possibly through a pattern of behavior. And then once it's identified, and then you go about strategically addressing it and possibly modifying that person's behavior, even thought process, through scripture and directions. I hope I answered your question.
Well, yeah, yes, yes, but and I want to ask you, and I'm not asking for detail, but I ask you
Hmm.
personally, do you think that there is enough or discussion in our culture, in our society, about what you just said? Because we aim to really quick to say that we have an answer from a psychological standpoint, because we like to define and point fingers. We're more apt to talk about the clinical versus understanding that there's a spiritual part of it, which is from the very beginning, like you said. I don't think, like a lot of times when I'm watching these shows, the spiritual part of it never. I mean, like 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 the victim will say. Now, this is a lot of time what the victim will say. They will say, "I looked into the eyes and I saw the devil. I saw
Hmm.
nothing, but I recognized that person who was like this before. But now, when they're in my presence and I looked in their eyes, I saw the devil. I saw something totally
Hmm.
different I've never seen before. I felt something that I've never felt before, and so on and so on." Now, they will say that, but the person in, let's just say, they speaking to law enforcement, speaking to the prosecutor, they're speaking to the judge, they're speaking to, they never address that in any way, form, or
Hmm.
fashion. No, sometimes in the judge, when they're reading this and they're getting ready to sentence them, sometimes the judge might say something in reference to that. But I think
Hmm.
overall, what I'm trying to say is, very rarely is the spiritual side is a component that is recognized and talked about as well as the whole. You need to go to jail. You need to be punished. You need to be put to death. You did this, da da da. And I'm not saying yay or nay on it, but rarely is the spiritual side of it and who they're really serving is a topic of conversation, and it comes out that way. Do, do you find that it's just a norm?
Well, yeah, from a litigation standpoint, I understand why they don't address, but it is encouraged. Maybe not out in the open, but I know there are programs, religious programs that encourage, that the inmates are encouraged to attend, to be a part of, on county and state level. Um, Different programs that has to do with behavioral modification and just maturing behavior, maturing in general. They are encouraged, but I think to put them in the litigation part of it probably would just extend an argument, because as you know, First Corinthians 2 said, "Who knows the spirit of man?" You know, so we could all say, like, there are people who lie and say, "Well, God told me to do this," or the devil said do this, and who can say it wasn't, without going into some very in depth conversation. So I can understand why they kind of stay away from it, but it is encouraged to seek spiritual counseling, for whether it be for the victims, for comfort and healing, whether it be for the families of the victim, to deal with the loss, if there's in cases of where there's a loss of life, it is encouraged, but to lay it out, and you can't legislate, spiritual behavior and those things, and you can't litigate those things. But I can say that, at least from a correction standpoint, it is encouraged, and it's not. It doesn't take a lot in most cases. Now, in most cases, it doesn't take a lot to encourage it, because a lot of times when a person goes to jail, first thing they want to see is a Bible. So it's not you don't have to twist nobody's arm, to get to pray and ask for guidance, or ask for mercy, or whatever they need from God.
Talk about the person who went into the correction system 30 years ago and the person who is there now.
Wow. The guy that went into corrections 30 years ago um, was young and full of ambition and full of confidence, to the point where perhaps arrogance. Um, you know, I wouldn't say want to make a difference. He probably was a lot more selfish then, and so and very good looking, strikingly handsome. You know, but just energetic. Wanting to experience so much, and wanted to touch as many aspects of life, as he could. He was inquisitive and inquiring, of many things, and found a lot of things interesting. You know, that's who he was. He wanted to know whatever's in front of him. He wanted to know something about it. How did it work? What is the origin of this, and what does this affect, in the world? Now, um, he still seeks to learn as much as he can. He doesn't necessarily want to touch everything, but he, learning of it is still an interest, and definitely not the arrogant, not strikingly handsome, but pretty, you know, and appreciative, and now when I look at corrections, it's a ministry. It's a ministry in that, not that I go preaching up and down the hallways and those things, but I try to live my life and carry myself as a professional and as a man, whereas I become a light to someone who may be in darkness, and that's whether it be an inmate or an officer or staff, anybody, a visitor, but just try to be a light, because when you're saved and you love the Lord, And when Christ imputes his heart into your heart, you see people different. You see circumstances different. And you really want people to enjoy life and enjoy moments and not be angry, not be upset, not be sad, not be fearful. So the best thing you can do is try to project the opposite of those things to try and impact that life. Particularly young men, young black men, but young men in general, but particularly those young men that look like my sons, that look like my grandson, that look like me. I especially try and when the opportunity presents itself to show compassion toward them and help them to understand, that my phrase I always tell them, don't give this place your best years, you know, and and it's usually received, but then I'll let them know, make it your business to stay away from these places and be there for the people that love you, and those things. So it's kind of ministry to me, I when I get an opportunity to show compassion, I do it, and I do it, you know, um, great cheerfully, and so yeah. At this point, this guy is really, really grateful, appreciative, and always ready to share what he has learned to help someone else.
I was going to ask you a question, and I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask that question because you made me think of something, and I want to share this with you because
Hmm.
of what you just said. And I want to know if you ever seen me in the prison system. And let me tell you what I mean. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. I
Yeah.
want to know if you've ever seen me in the prison system. I was telling people how God looks over you, right? And how he
Hmm.
watches over you when you're naive and blah, 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 blah. So, I mentor and I deal with youth and da, da, da. And so
Right.
they really don't know your story. They don't know where you're from, and I'm really from like and I don't know how to say it, but other than I'm one of the worst, let me see.
Paper
I'm
towel.
from part that they would call the hood in Jacksonville, and it probably would
Right.
be, it would be kind of like over there, like in the Paramore area. That would
Right.
be here in the Orlando area. People here in Orlando know what I'm talking about. So I come from like that environment on my mother's side, which is great people. Da, da, da. I don't know that I'm from the
Right.
hood. You don't. You don't know you from the hood.
Uh-huh.
to the,
Uh-huh.
to the degree that we see it. How we see it now. That was just a
Right.
normal
Right.
thing. Okay, so I'm living in Orlando now, and this
Hmm.
was in the '80s. So my
Hmm.
cousin, who I grew up with, his mother and my mother are sisters. And
Hmm.
I said he was one of the biggest drug dealers in Duval County, right? But I don't
Right.
know him that way. I just know him as cuz. So
Hmm.
Pastor, my brother, I come to town. My brother say to me, hey, such and such hadn't seen you in a while. He wants you to stop by and say hi. So
Hmm.
I followed my brother over to where he was. My brother got out of the car and went in the house. So I'm just going over to his
Right.
house to say hi. So I guess
Hmm.
my brother didn't tell him that I was out there. So my brother went in, and I was about maybe 20, 30 seconds behind my brother. So I
Hmm.
knock on the door. My cousin opened the door. He closes it. He opens it. He closes it. So he finally opened it. Oh, hey, cuz, how you doing? So he's standing there with a gun behind his back, right?
Hmm.
So I walk through the door. I look. They're over there cutting the cocaine and the crack. They're over there to the right, mixing up their their drugs. They doing what they doing. Pastor, I ain't paying them no attention. I'm just happy to see my cousin, giving a hug. Da, 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 da. Now this is show you just how green I was, Pastor. Show you
Hmm.
how green I was. My cousin says to me, hey, cuz, you want a TV? I looked at him like, yeah, I want, I want a TV. He go, hey, see that TV over there right there? When you leave, take that with you, right? So I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. But
Hmm.
this is how green I was. You know what I said to him, Pastor? I said, Where's the remote? My cousin looked my cousin looked at me like, dummy, I ain't have time to steal the remote. I'm saying, you should have seen the look he had on his face, because that's just how green I was.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is, if he ended up going to prison and spending like maybe 15 years in prison, by the way. But my point of it was is that if they had came in that day at that time, I would have
Right,
been down there in the jail system. And so what
right.
I'm saying is, I had nothing to do with it. I was ignorant and just naive to the situation. And so
Mhm.
my question that I'm asking you, how often do you see me down there in the jail system?
Uh, I do, because you have those who want to belong, and this could go into the fatherless, and so they're looking for father figures, and so they find that the only ones who would really take that time with them. Well, I wouldn't say the only ones, because God bless you, have some teachers and coaches who I've known in the community who would take time with these kids, but then you have those in the streets who assert themselves. I mean, kids don't fall into their laps by accident. Many times they assert themselves to grab these young men and young women and kind of take them under their wings. And yeah, so you see that, and one young man, I was talking to him about something, and I mentioned about, CI, and he said, "What does that mean?" I said, "That means you shouldn't be coming to jail. You don't know what a CI is. This is not your world. And I said, and you can tell sometimes by their mannerism, their speech, that this is not their world. You don't. I don't know how you ended up here, but this is not you. You were raised, you were cared for, you were taught. Somebody took the time out to teach you manners. You know, you identify those things, and when I do, I speak on it, and I let them know. I can tell, looking at you, that this is not really your world, and either you're trying to fit in, or you tripped and fell in it. I don't know, but it's not something you want to be a part of. But yeah, see that. Now, to your story, I have a little story of a guy, how we were talking about alcoholism and what it could do. And, we all can tell the story about what it does to the body, and what alcohol addiction and those things. Well, I have a story that I tell everyone, that have a problem with alcohol. Excuse me. And here's a gentleman that I'd been knowing coming in and out of jail. And his only crime was alcohol, because, he starts drinking, and either he'll get into a fight or something, and he'll trespass or whatever. It was all stemmed from alcohol. Well, he came in one particular time, and I looked at his charges, and it was like all kind of drug charges. And so I go and talk. I said, "Hey man, what's going on with you? This isn't you here." I said, "You got felony drug charges." And he said, "I'm gonna tell you, Mr. Jenkins, what happened." He said, "I'm down here at the little spot." He said, "And I'm just a lookout." He said, "I'm being a lookout for the drug dealers for free drinks. They buy me beer or whatever, and that was at my pay to be a lookout." And said, "Of course, I was drinking and drinking." He said, "I passed out." He said, "The place got raided, and everybody stuffed their drugs in my pockets. So, 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 so when the search team came, nobody had drugs on him. All the drugs were on him, in his pocket, in his shoe. I think he said he stuffed down his shirt. So the only person that got the possession charges was himself." So, and he really said then he was going to really address his alcohol problem, because, that he was facing some serious, and, I don't know what became of it. He said, because even the cops knew, "We know you don't do drugs, but they're on you. You have all the drugs on you, in your shoes, in your pockets, in your shirt." So, yeah, that's the story of someone who's definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, as I told that story, because I was talking about how naive I was. Okay, I was naive. I was naive, stupidly naive, because I was telling him about when I was just out of high school, because in my environment, Pastor, it was normal. I mean, I've been in the car. I've never, I mean, majority of my friends, I shouldn't say a lot of my, no, I shouldn't say the majority. A lot of my friends back then smoked reefer and smoked marijuana. I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting there, and back then they had the album cover, so they rolling it, blah 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 blah. So that was very common. You see the seeds, So that was common. It was no big deal. I've been in the car. I don't tell you how many times they ride and they passing the money back and forth, and they smoking. They get mad at me because I rolled down the window. But it never interested me. I never been high, never been drunk, none of that. But in my circle, everybody, a lot of, when I went to college, man, half of the team was in college in the dorm, in the apartments. The place was lit up every day. So that was normal. To me, that's normal. So when I was getting ready to go off to college, one of the guys that I worked with, he was on this work detail, and he was out on this special thing because he was actually he was in prison for murder. He was robbing like a 7-Eleven, and he ended up shooting the guy with a shotgun, and how he got out, I don't know. But we worked together. And he said to me, Pastor, he said, "You a good guy. I could use you. You getting ready to go off to college, right?" I go like, "Yeah." He said, "I could use you, man. You can go on campus and you can sell some marijuana for me." Right?
Wow.
Now, Pastor, this is the honest truth. I tell people, I never thought about what he was asking me to do. All I thought about was the guy was asking me to do him a favor. So if he's my friend, he asked me to do a favor, I've been around it. And if he want me to sell it, and if there's a favor, it crossed my mind that I'll do this guy a favor. I never thought about the fact that I was selling marijuana. It never crossed my mind for money. Money never crossed my mind. Zero. It had nothing to do with money. All I know was a person who I got along with was asking me to do him a favor. And so that's what I mean by, through my naiveness, my stupidity, my ignorance, and what I mean by what you just answered, me in the prison system.
Right.
But when I went off, it didn't happen. But my point was when he asked me, my only thought was, well, I can do this guy a favor. I wasn't thinking about what he was really asking me to do. I just heard, you can do me a favor. If you go, while you're on campus, you can sell some marijuana for me. Because at that time, when I'm like 18 years old, in my circle, I saw it all the time. And I never once thought about even money being involved in it. I was just thinking about, hey, I'm going to do Johnny a favor. So, but that's just how naive I was.
Right.
My second question that I was going to ask you, in reference to when you started 30 years ago, who is Pastor Jenkins now in ministry when he started? How many years ago you started ministering?
24 years. 24 years in ministry, 18 years pastoring.
Well, let me ask you, however you want to answer it, 24 years ago or 18 versus now, whichever one you want to answer.
Well, I think pastoring really began to shape my life as a minister and preacher, because you're in constant engaged, in some form of counseling and preaching and teaching. So it was the pastoring that really kind of began to grow, and I'm more compassionate. I have a greater desire, I think now, to teach God's word, the doctrinal truth of the Bible. Starting out 18 years ago, even 24 years of preaching, it was just, let me convey this message. Let me tell you what's going on. Almost close. I was never really a topical preacher, but it was very close to being a topical preaching. um, and context, contextual preaching. Now, I try to do more doctrinal teaching. I want people to know why they believe, in what they believe. The why is sometimes missing. People tell you what they believe, uh, and they'll tell you why they believe it, but they don't know why it's true. They believe it's true, but what makes it true? And I want that to be known. I think that's what fortifies us as believers against false doctrine. That's what fortifies us against false teaching. That's what fortifies us, against the rudiments, as the Bible said, of the world, is doctrinal truth. So now I'm more passionate in teaching and more compassionate in preaching, and just strong desire to teach believers, in wherever they are lacking in doctrinal truth.
Um, I wanted to ask you, in your own words. Well, one, before you leave, you're going to have to invite the people to
Yes.
True Vine Baptist Church for either Sunday service or a Bible study. We want to send out that
Okay.
invitation. But I
Okay.
would also like to invite them to be in tune to the pastors' roundtable. And I've never asked you this here before, but if you were to describe the pastors' roundtable, and we are inviting them, you would describe the pastors' roundtable as what to the people out there?
Very informative and enlightening and fun. I have fun when I participate in it. I'm learning and listening to the brothers. I probably do more listening anyway. It allows me to share what I know and share what I've learned. So I would say informative, and sometimes that's the best way for some of us to learn is to listen. Sometimes we don't have the patience and the discipline to just read and research, but you can learn just sitting listening. So yeah, I would say it's very, very beneficial hour to someone who wants to understand not just doctrine, but we also talked about things in concept, certain concepts, and it's very informative.
Well, and the reason why I say that, Pastor, was because, and I really haven't shared this with anybody from the pastors' roundtable, but what I've learned, and it was I guess God revealed it to me about 3 months ago. And this is what I truly have learned from the pastors' roundtable, Pastor. I've
Mm,
learned that a lot of us really don't know who God is.
mm,
We know of a God. We know there is
right.
a God. But what I think I have learned more than anything from the pastors' roundtable is that people really don't know who God is. And
Mm,
that is one of the things in which why, and I don't know if you recall me saying this on the pastors' roundtable, but I've said it a
mm,
couple of times that I think, and it to me, a church for a lot of people is going to church, listening to your word on Sunday, paying my tithes, and
mm,
seeing that my bills are paid, everything's okay, so everything must be okay. And for me personally, I think that's how people see life and what church is, and that's what God is. That's
mm,
what I have observed. And when you
mm,
speak, as you would say, there's a lot of people who can articulate scripture, but not knowing how to apply it. And
mm,
actually, they can verbally say back to you what they just read, but do they really understand it and knowing how to apply it? You know. But
mm,
I think I probably have learned that more than anything, is that recognizing who God is, and
mm,
then really understanding who who He is in me and what is
mm,
expected of me. But
mm,
that's what I think I've learned from the pastors' roundtable. you
mm.
know.
Amen.
But I really enjoy it. and I try to express to people, what it is, and I encourage
Hmm.
them, and I get a lot of good feedback from the pastors roundtable, and I
Hmm.
appreciate you taking the time out to to come on. And by the way, the pastors roundtable, Pastor, you know what the topic is for this month? The past, I
Exactly.
mean the topic is, have Christ ever been in Christmas? So we we want to talk about, have Christ ever been in Christmas?
All right.
Yeah. But with that being said, again, this is the Journey 2020, and I have with me my pastor from True Vine Baptist Church. And Pastor, this is your opportunity to invite people to True Vine.
Okay, my friends, thank you for listening, and thank you, Brother Morris, for having me. As he said, I serve proudly as pastor of True Vine Baptist Church in Orlando, Florida, 1711 Rose Boulevard, where God's purpose is always in progress. We have, of course, Sunday worship service and Sunday school on Sundays, 9:30 a.m. Worship service begins at 11 a.m. We have Bible study Tuesday evening, and Bible study is done through Zoom now. Myself and another gentleman who is definitely a true teacher in the Word of God, a man of God, Deacon Lewis Taylor. We teach on alternate Tuesday evenings beginning at 7:30 via Zoom. If you would like to join us, we can send you the link so that you can link in right from your home and join us in Bible teaching on Tuesday evenings. We have programs that are throughout the year. We ask that you will stay in touch with us, and if you'd like to leave us your information, we can send you invitations when we are going to be involved and engaged in programs, whether it be preaching and worship or whether it be singing and praise and worship. We try to stay busy throughout the year, and we definitely invite you to come and be a part of it, serve alongside us, and perhaps share where the Lord has led you and share what God has gifted you. God bless you, and may God keep you, in my prayer. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, as you said, Bible study is on Zoom now. And if you email me at that email address, and if you would like to join us, I can certainly send you the link, and happy for you to join us. And you can invite somebody who can invite somebody who can invite somebody. So we welcome that as well. And then we can also give you some more information on the Pastors Roundtable. And Pastor, like I said, this coming, not this Monday, of course, but the following Monday, Dr. Robinson is coming on. And we're talking about, and even for yourself, Pastor, do you get calls this time of the year, even more so because our topic is during the holiday season, and how a lot of us go through depression. I think the suicide rate is kind of high, and what people are going through. Do you have conversations even more so this time of the year during the holiday season than normal?
Yeah, yes, I think of, I don't have any data, but yeah, this time of year, particularly this particular year, I've dealt with those who had thoughts, a couple of attempts, suicide, and then just general depression. And sometimes the depression is not because of loss. Sometimes people are depressed because they don't have the finance. They have a concept where I can't get gifts for certain people and those things. So we have to try to teach in a certain way that you're the gift. Don't put so much focus on what you go out and purchase or obtain, but make sure you present the best version of yourself this time of year, and it can be a blessing to someone more so than probably something you get out of the store. I think if we learn to and think on that mindset, I will be the best version of myself during this time of year. You're more of a blessing than you would be if you would go out to a store and buy something. So
Pastor, I don't mean to chuckle, but I don't know. It's just weird to me. As I get older, and that's what I mean by, have Christ ever been in Christmas? Has he ever has Christ ever been in Christmas, because that's what Christmas is to people, a gift. It's like,
Mm.
wow.
Mm.
What about what Christmas is?
Right.
It's kind of like, wow. Oh, okay. It's based on a gift, but
Mhm.
looking forward to that as well, and to help the people better understand what Christmas is really about. Not quite sure if it'll make a difference, but that's right along with understanding Easter and how we have basically put ourselves into the midst of something that is nothing but about making money, because like for an example, the Pastors Roundtable was talking about, I mean, last month was talking about celebration. How do we celebrate?
Right. Right.
And then it just comes out that now that we put ourselves into it, it's all of nothing about but money, you know.
Yes.
And that's
Exactly.
what, for me personally, that's what Christmas seems to be about, or the holiday, or something that
Yeah.
we, celebrate. Was it Valentine's Day? Was we celebrate Easter? And as the guy said, I don't know how Easter Bunny ever got to be part of Easter, but that's all part of marketing and making money and so on and
Right.
so forth. What does that have to do with
Right.
Christ and blah, 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 blah. But I don't
Mhm.
think that we even think for a moment to try and actually analyze that and put it in its proper place. We just accept it as like, well, the Easter Bunny has always been a part of Easter, you know.
Yeah.
But again, I want to thank you for taking the time. And our topic today, in which we were talking about, I was asking Pastor, who there's the ministering part of counseling. And, oh, you know what I want to ask you, Pastor?
Hmm.
Have you ever been in the counseling? Because people go to marriage counseling before they get married, right? And
Hmm.
so, have you ever just said to somebody in their counseling, maybe y'all should think about this and not get married? I'm not necessarily in those words, but have you ever come across that?
Reevaluate your decisions. That's yeah. Yes. Those are the words you use. Let's reassess. Some decisions you've made regarding this. Yeah, because
Wow.
you listen to them. Sometimes their focus is on the wrong thing. They don't even want to deal with the spiritual. The spiritual is like an abstract, and that's the first sign right there that this is, when we take it out of God's hand and put it in our hands, we got this. We'll do this. This is God's institution. He instituted marriage, you know, and we take it out of His hands. He said, "We'll do it."
But and I guess it shouldn't be a surprise. But what you just said, I say all the time, and they look at you like you crazy. I'm
Yeah.
serious. I'm like,
I mean, I usually liken it to getting on a plane and going up front and say, you know what? Now that we're at 36,000 feet, and we've leveled off to the altitude, you tell the pilot, you can go ahead and go. We got this from here. It's the same. It's almost, to me, the same concept. You know, So no, it's I I I discourage that type of thinking. Always keep marriage, family, and church affiliation. Always keep it in spiritual realm. You know,
now let me ask you this right here, Pastor. Has anyone
Mhm.
ever taken your advice on that?
One, one, one couple, one
Wow.
couple.
How did you respond to that? What did you, for yourself? How did you see that?
Well, I was thankful because that's what I saw. It was not based on anything other than probably superficial feelings. And I kind of we pointed it out just through discussion. I saw a good counselor will let you figure it out. They won't tell you, but they'll let you figure it out. And that's kind of what happened. And when we arrived to that, I got this look from them both, like, what do we do? And that's when I go, let's reassess our decisions. Let's reevaluate our plan and see what comes after that.
Yeah,
Amen for
it's
that.
funny too because we can go on and talk and talk and talk and talk, but I will say this right here. One of the other shows that we're gonna do, and let me tell you where it's gonna come from, Pastor. I said when you get to be my age,
Hmm.
you've gone through and seen so much when it comes to women in your relationships, right? And so now you
Hmm.
reflect back on them.
Hmm.
And so as you reflect back on them and you're able to recognize things now that you have a few years on you,
Hmm.
these things that now that you see and better understand. So one of the other shows, and people, I hope that you tune in because I think you probably can get something out of it, is I recognize I dated somebody who was bipolar. I didn't know that then. I I dated somebody that's a narcissist. I didn't understand it then, and I
Hmm.
dated somebody who was a sociopath.
Hmm.
So Dr. Robinson is going to come on, and he's going to define a sociopath. He's going to
Hmm.
define uh, those things.
Nice.
But the show
Hmm.
on that's dealing with being bipolar is a totally different show. But a
Hmm.
sociopath and a narcissist, we're going to talk about the different patterns. We're going to talk about recognizing it and what you probably can do. I have no idea because
Hmm.
hopefully he can help us be able to better understand whether or not that's what's standing in front of you, and then what are some of the alternatives that you may have to whatever that is. I have no
Hmm.
idea. So I'm pretty sure you see it all from the jail system through counseling and whatever it is. You see it all the time. But
Hmm.
I just, as I reflect back on it, the light came on and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I don't mean it the way that it sounds. I just recognize it. I just understand it better now because before I was more puzzled about that particular spirit, that particular person, and the challenges that was faced. So, but
Hmm.
anyway, looking forward to that as well. You
Hmm.
shouldn't be a stranger on the Journey 2020.
Okay.
We see you monthly on the Pastors Roundtable, but I'm always intrigued with a lot of your stories, especially with what you do. But I tell people all the time,
Hmm.
I was introduced to you by a friend of mine, and I say
Hmm.
the first time I heard you preach, I went back to that church, and I've been there ever since. And that's
Amen.
and that's the truth.
Praise God.
The very first time I heard you
Amen.
preach, I said, this
Amen.
guy right here makes this simple. It's not complicated at all. So that's why I'm inviting you. I'm serious. That's why I
Amen.
invited you to come in and just hang out at
Hmm.
True Vine one Sunday.
Amen. Amen.
All right. With that being said, Pastor, is there any last words you want to say before we get out of here on the Journey 2020?
Everybody continue to be prayerful for our leaders in society today. Uh, with some of the things we see amongst the leaders, the bickering, let's be prayerful for leadership. Ask God to guide us. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is Pastor Omega Jenkins from True Vine Baptist Church. And he was here to talk to us a little bit about the spiritual side and the mental side when it comes to counseling and to kind of help us how he himself make it work the best of his ability. And we appreciate him for his patience, his kindness, and his wisdom. And thank you for sharing it with
Amen.
us here today on the Journey 2020. And hope you had a blessed Thanksgiving, Pastor,
I
and have
did.
a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But I'm
Amen.
I'm going to see you before then.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And
All
likewise
right.
yourself. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for
Thank
having
you
me.
for taking the time to come on the Journey 2020 today. All right. That's the pastor. That is Pastor Omega Jenkins from True Vine Baptist Church. I'm Charles Morris. Thank you for spending a little time with us here on the Journey 2020. We've been around since 2013, and we come to you every Monday at around 7 p.m. most of the time. And I always tell people, be on the lookout for Chill Mondays. We got that coming up. For questions, comments, or concerns. make sure you hit us up with an email. And like I said, next week we will have Dr. John Robertson, who actually came up with the idea and the concept of the Journey 2020. And we're going to talk about depression during the holiday season, recognizing it and how we might be able to help others and might be able to help ourselves and to better understand it and some of the things that we can do under the circumstances and situations, because I myself have for many years had tried to deal with the holiday season starting in Thanksgiving and so on and so on. So I can relate, and I think this is a very, very good topic. So you make sure that you tune in next week as well. Again, this is the Journey 2020. For questions and comments, like I said, and if you would like to join us on the Zoom call with True Vine, you hit me up with an email right there. If you would like to join us for a Sunday service, you can also catch us on, because the service is also streamed on YouTube and it's also streamed on Facebook. So either or, you can join us. There's no reason for you not to be part of the Vine. I'm Charles Morse. As I always say, the word comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. Everybody enjoy the rest of the week, and you be blessed.